All right, you're watching TVC News. Now, Nigeria's economic team has its tasks set out clear in preparing the economy for a stronger recovery process post-COVID-19 and steering the economy away from an imminent recession. Economic watchers project a best-case scenario of a V-shaped recovery, which will be characterized by a quick and sustained recovery only if government moves at a fast pace with economic adjustments and establishing macroeconomic indices that largely affect output despite a projected contraction of about 3.3 to 3.5% for now. Now, the first quarter gross domestic product report earlier released calms the mood with a GDP growth of 1.87% year-on-year, which saw the oil sector posting a growth of 5.06%, while the non-oil sector grew by 1.55% in real terms compared to 2019 figures. Now, this isn't enough as a dip expected in the second and third quarter, largely reflecting the volatility of the oil market and lockdown leading to plunge in demand. Now, with the MPC reducing the monetary policy rate to 12.5% and retaining other key parameters, the charge now is on government to monitor closely increasing global headwinds such as weak aggregate demand and rising corporate debt, and away from these external shocks, increasing the local revenue base through tax collection is a major contending issue as the purchasing power of many has been largely affected and a soaring unemployment rate. So these are some of the areas we'll be looking at generally. But while some say there is gloom and doom ahead, others are saying no, there are opportunities to take advantage of. So talking about this, I have right now with me in the studio Tolu Gunjobi, our business editor. Tolu, it's nice to have you join me right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I also have joining me from PwC, Taiwo Oyedele. Taiwo, it's nice to have you join me as well.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Great. Now, let me start with you, Taiwo. COVID-19 has came in such a way that a lot of people, from the projections in aviation to crude oil to taxes and all of that, 2020 was looking good one way or the other. But COVID-19, no one saw coming, devastated all of that. From our point right now, there are other economists who are saying that that demand could spike. And if demand spikes, it could activate a little bit of hope in the way business will be done going forward in the coming months. What do you say?
Yeah, I think, of course, you're right. Nobody saw COVID-19 coming, at least not even at this scale of the impact that we have seen both locally and also globally. And I also listened to your opening remarks around people expecting a V-shaped recovery. I'll say generally there are people who are pessimistic, there are those who are optimistic, and then there are some of us that are considered as being realistic. I do not think that there's going to be a spike in demand because you have to think about the fundamentals. A lot of people are unemployed. We have the easing of the lockdown has not been as smooth as we would have expected. So that's also having some impact. So the problems and the challenges we have are not going away anytime soon. And also bear in mind that these were challenges that predate even COVID-19. I'll probably say I expect a U-shaped recovery rather than a V-shape. But government can do a lot to make sure that that process of recovery is as short as possible, including, for example, what the MPC did by reducing the MPR by 100 basis points. This should be something we have to do. Everyone, private sector, individuals, government, organized private sector, have to work together to make this recovery to be very quick.
Okay. Now, Tolu, let me bring you in here. When it comes to the issue of crude oil prices, global crude oil prices, a lot of persons projected that with the shutdown of most of the economies across the world and crude oil nosedived to even below $20 a barrel. At this time, no one expected that it was going to rise this fast to the level to which it is right now. What is responsible for this?
Well, true. Looking at what happened when the lockdown started, it wasn't looking good at all. You know, looking at the figures, it was at the point as low as almost $12, $13 per barrel. That's for crude oil. But yeah, one way or the other, because of the easing of these lockdowns across board globally, even in Nigeria, we know what we have at the moment. So I think the demand is gradually increasing and improving. But that doesn't really mean that we might get to where we are supposed to be. Yes, the government has been reasonable enough to come together and reduce the benchmark for the budget, which looks a little bit reasonable at the moment, and also revising the budget to accommodate some things, particularly that has to do with health facilities and all of that we didn't have before now. So it's clear that the government, they actually, well, they've started that move, but like Taiwo said, a lot still needs to be done. For me, I believe that oil price remains very important because that's a driver of our economy. We are yet to be a diversified economy. We are not doing very well when it comes to the non-oil sector. We've seen the figures that are coming in, coupled with the fact that we can't even do much of exporting and importing at this time because of COVID-19. So the fiscal side and the monetary side, just like what the central bank has done yesterday, I think there needs to be more synergy between both parties so that there will spread out ways that we can, you know, help ameliorate, help cushion the effect of all of these challenges, because small businesses will suffer and they are the backbone of any economy. They use this for don't forget that we don't have steady supply in this country, and we use most of the fuel supply, gas supply that we use is to even power generators and all of that. So yes, a little bit of spike, but it's not what we want at this time. A lot still needs to be done.
All right, Taiwo, as the prices of crude oil was nosediving and government at the time had to reduce the price from 145 naira to 125 naira, Nigerians were expecting a further reduction because it is supposed to reflect the nomenclature, the volatility at that level, but we didn't see it come beyond 125. What do you say?
Yeah, so I think a combination of factors. One, I agree with Tolulope in terms of his analysis, but also on top of that is we need to bear in mind that the OPEC Plus eventually agreed to a production cut of almost 10 million barrels per day. On a normal day without COVID-19, if you do that, you should be talking about oil at about $80 or $90 per barrel. So being at 30 plus means that we are not even anywhere close as of yet. So in terms of the pump price of petroleum products, particularly petrol, because as you would have observed, the price of diesel has not really gone down significantly as you would expect. But for petrol, here's my take. Now, because of the challenges we have with crude oil, which is our main source of government revenue, not only just foreign exchange receipts, that is nosediving. Even at 30-something, even at 40, we're still going to struggle. Don't forget that our original budget had a benchmark of $7 per barrel, and it was still a very huge deficit in that budget. So how much less at 30? So I think that government needs to pay attention to all the subsidies that we have on petroleum products. For petrol, it was under recovery. We were selling at a lower price than the landing cost to the NNPC. Number two, there was foreign exchange subsidy. CBN was allocating foreign currency to NNPCs to import fuel at a rate that they were not, selling to other people in the market. Number three was tax subsidy. So legally speaking, there's supposed to be VAT. It was suspended. Many countries have excise duty on petrol. We don't have it in Nigeria. So before you start reducing the price of petrol at the pump, you have to make sure that all those subsidies have been adjusted for. And I say this because petroleum product is one way of raising revenue easily, and it has one of the least negative impacts on the poorest people. When they reduce the pump price from 145 to 125, nothing went down, right? Prices of goods and services did not go down, which means the poorest people did not benefit. It was the middle class and the transporter that benefited. So that's one area where government could have been able to raise more revenue to be able to administer palliative and to provide stimulus to the sectors that are most vulnerable during this time.
All right, if you look at the growth projection for Nigeria, it is less than 2% annual growth rate. And as it is right now, the country is desperate to kick back, to start development. Everyone is desperate. Nigerians are desperate. Unemployment is there. There are so many other issues that are burden on the government right now. Issues of taxation, issues of aviation, issues of oil and employment creation. Now, what is the place of government right now? How from the outlook, from the standpoint of government, how would you say, what should they do to ensure that growth rates continue to rise, especially for Nigeria?
Yeah, so I think there's no government anywhere in the world that has an easy job. It's not meant to be easy. Even for economies that are developed and they're doing well, you still have to worry about not going into decline. You have to worry about crime, have to worry about security, have to worry about unemployment, immigration. So these issues would always be there. What government needs to do now is to take a long-term view. It's not, life does not start and end now with COVID-19. I know it's an immediate concern and it's important to address it. But in trying to develop the strategy and the solutions, we have to take a long-term view. And the role that government needs to play, in my view, is the role of a facilitator. So government needs to listen to the market, listen to the players, listen to the industry, listen to the private sector. What do we need to do to make aviation very viable? What do we need to do to promote the creative industry? What do we need to do to promote manufacturing, industrialization, textiles, services? The list is long. Government should not pretend that it has all it takes, including resources, to fix our problems. Imagine, for example, if we are able to listen to the private sector and we do what they want, and they're the ones that are building power generation, they're the one building rail, they're the one building ports, we will not have to allocate the little money we have by government to this infrastructure because the private sector can do it better, they'll do it more profitably, and then they will pay taxes to government. So this has to be a holistic plan, and to the point that Tolu made before, we have to have a coordinated approach, not only between the fiscal and monetary authorities, but amongst all the arms of government, as well as levels of government to include the subnational. Okay.
Now, Tolu, let me bring you in here. The way that the government runs sometimes, some of the policies, sometimes there's usually a clash. And then things run at cross purposes sometimes. When it comes to synergy, because the economy is one, whether it is, because when Nigeria has been, all the indices are being calculated, it's calculated as one. What should the government be doing now to ensure that there's synergy between all of the industries that Taiwo mentioned earlier? There's the creative industry, which is a new gold mine coming up. The mining industry is there. Agriculture is still there. Taxation, on the other hand, is there. Oil is still there, which is almost 70, 80%, or even 90% of foreign exchange earnings for the country. What should government be doing now? What kind of policy should be in place?
I think this is the real time for us to, in whole, diversify our economy. Yes, we've always talked about this, but I think this is the time to take advantage of it, look really inward. Now, let's look at projections that we've had from the likes of World Bank, IMF, NESG. We've seen a lot of figures. We've seen people saying that Nigeria is going to go into a deep recession. We've seen people talk about how we're going to get out of recession. We've seen the kind of V-shaped, U-shaped, like Taiwo just identified. But what I see is that, yes, there's no easy job for any government, particularly Nigeria at this time. But the private sector has a very important role to play at this time. We've seen what has happened even fighting COVID-19. Governments could not do it alone. The private sector had to really come in to play a role in making sure that government was able to actualize getting isolation centers, getting emergency units set up and all of that. Look at an example is Lagos State. Look at what's been happening over here. So I think more synergy, that's one very important thing. And a lot also needs to be done from the federal side. Yes, we've been going into a lot of debt because we need to fund the budget. We need to look for ways to make sure the economy keeps going, create jobs. But all of these sectors that you mentioned, mining is there, is a new gold mine we need to really look at and get money. The creative industry. Don't forget when the economy was rebased, the creative sector played an important role in putting us ahead of South Africa at that very time. So these are issues that we need to come back home and get homegrown solutions, look inward and make sure that we take backward integration for the manufacturing sector. Enough of looking out to get raw materials so that we can save forex in this part of the country. We need to have refineries in this country so that we can stop importing petroleum products. We know what's happening with Dangote. Government should support him more so that that can become fully effective. If we do all of this, this year is going to be very difficult for government to actually attain the tax figures or projections because we know what has happened. Lockdown is still on, gradual easing. When businesses are not operating, how are they going to pay taxes? So a lot needs to be done. Hospitality sector, tourism sector, they still remain down as we speak. They are not operating. Policies are not out. We are yet to get the outlines for them on how they are going to operate. So a lot needs to be done, and the private sector must, I use the word must, be carried along by government for them to be able to actualize all of this. If we are to go back, there will be a recession. I don't think there's any way we can run away from recession. But getting out of it is what I think government should start thinking about, and the time is now.
Okay, so we have to start putting all of those strategies into place right now. Indeed. Now, Taiwo, let's come back to the issue of border closure. More people have come out to say that it was a blessing for Nigeria. And we've also heard voices say that closure of border is the 20th century economic strategy, because Nigeria, in fact, if you look at the position of Nigeria as a hub in the West African or in the African region, closing of border certainly hurts some businesses here and there. But certainly Nigeria has to do whatever it can to protect its own economic interest. Would you, post-COVID-19, would you advise that the borders remain closed so that Nigeria can keep reaping from the benefit of the closure of the border in the 21st century?
Yeah, interesting question. I think, we have to look at the border closure as a means to an end rather than an end in itself. It's not an achievement to close your border. It has to be that we close the border because we want to put certain things in place. So the question will be, how far have we been able to make progress in that respect? I'll try and broaden this conversation a little bit. And I'll say, when you talk about trade, when you talk about importation, when you talk about exportation, I like to look at it from three categories. So you can export and import intellectual property. You can import and export services. You can also export and import goods. So when you close your border in the way we did, you're only just talking about goods. Services are still being imported and exported. Intellectual property being exported and imported. In fact, the leading economies in the world are not leading because of goods anymore. They make their money and they create value significantly from intellectual property and from services. So while we are dealing with border closure, we have to develop a national strategy to say, where would Nigeria play? One lesson that COVID-19 has taught all of us is that there are areas where you must be self-sufficient. And I say, if you go to the Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs, anything that has to do with your physiological need, food, water, healthcare, that you have to be self-sufficient, because we saw everybody just close their border and whatever they had, they were using to take care of themselves. Other than that, everything else, we need to look for our area of strength and play in the international community. People are beginning to ask now, why do I even need to in-house many services when I can outsource them? So the question of shared service centers is now being asked. So a lot of countries and companies use India. Can Nigeria not reposition itself to be the center for shared services for Africa? So we need to make sure that these things we start developing them now, and there's no closure of border or COVID-19 that would affect that because it's very strategic. So we have to address physical goods, but also services and intellectual property.
All right. We have to leave it here now. Taiwo Yedele, Head of Tax and Corporate Advisory Services at the PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you so much for talking to us right now. And Tululokwa Gunjabi, we must thank you also for your time on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. The last few hours, we've been looking at Nigeria since 1999 until now, looking at the Fourth Republic and how we have fared so far. A lot still needs to be done from all of the areas we've talked about, from security to economy to politics to governance and employment, economy, and so on. We all have so much to do, but certainly Nigeria is moving, and that's what all is looking forward to. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. Certainly, we'll still keep a tab on our bulletins. We have more stories to bring your way as we get along. Have a great day, and bye now.